from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Iron Woman. Today we have a very special guest. It's Leekei Tang from Paris.
Hi, Susanne. Thank you very much for inviting me.
This is so cool. So I have to say, Leekei and I, we actually met in person. And before we met in person, we were both participants at the podcast fellowship with Seth Godin. And I don't know, for some reason, when I send a message, I'll be in Paris in December, Leekei and I met up, and it was so beautiful just to meet her. And also she gave us some great tips what to visit. So it's always good to have a local person. So thank you so much for that, Leekei. But who is Leekei who will be joining us today on the marathon episodes?
Well, thank you very much. It was really lovely to meet you in Paris as well, you and your mother.
Yeah.
So as you've already said, I'm based in Paris, where I've lived most of my life. Actually, I grew up here, but then after I finished my studies, I lived in other places in the world, and now I'm back in Paris. I've been back to Paris for maybe over 10 years now. Right now, I create fashion business acceleration programs for fashion business owners. I work with international organizations and trade associations. I run these programs. I help fashion business people launch their brands and grow their brands so the brand becomes more profitable and is more meaningful to them as well. Yeah. Because one of my point is that you cannot separate business from sustainable development. And so those two aspects are connected in my approach and in the way I design this fashion business acceleration programs. I'm based in Paris, and so I'm able to do that because I have had my own business in fashion for almost 10 years. As I launched handbag brands over 10 years ago in Paris. It was a very interesting experience, especially from entrepreneurial point of view, because it's a real business. It's very international, very globalized. It's a mix of creativity and business. It went well, it grew, and it caused me a lot of headaches. It caused me a lot of headaches. And well, today we're going to talk about running and sports in general, I guess. Yeah. And actually, this was a kind of lifesaver for me. Exercise, sports, and running has been really, really pivotal in my work, really give me the strength to go beyond and push myself further.
And what do you think it is? So we might have in the audience people who are novices in marathon running or people who are experienced, but how did you get into it? Was it to reduce stress or to get more endurance, more energy? I don't know. What is it for you?
I should say that I've always been into sports, some sort of sport practice. Because I think it's something, it seems to be difficult, but it's actually very simple. You know, once you understand the mechanics and you're really willing to do the work, you can learn something and you can make progress. And I find it very, very interesting. Yep. So I've always been interested in different sort of sports. For running, actually, I grew up with a very wrong idea of running because I grew up with, I grew up with French women's magazines. And I remember two things I read in these magazines that are completely untrue, I think. But I grew up with these two false ideas. One is running a marathon is really, really hard. And when you run a marathon, you might lose 1 year in your life expectancy. This is something I've read in a magazine, probably in the 80s or in the 90s. Yeah. That's completely silly.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
I would say running a marathon is hard if you don't train enough. And it's hard, right? It's 42 kilometers or 26 miles, but if you train well? I always say it's all in your head. So tell us how you got to it.
Well, I started running in 2000, I think 2001 or 2002, but I started with a half marathon. Because that's the other thing I've read in the magazine is that if you don't run before you turn 30, you'll never be able to run. That's a stupid idea. Again, that I've read I was in my 29, so about to turn 30. And so I thought, oh, well, I need to start running. And so I decided to start running. So I had my first half marathon in 2002. Yeah. And then in 2012, I ran my first marathon in 2013. In 2012, I realized that 2012, 2013 was going to be a very difficult year in my business because a lot of things are moving, a lot of things are changing. Being a business owner, it's something very, very lonely. It feels really, really lonely. Actually, before I decided to run a marathon in 2012, I decided to join a boot camp. Yeah, and it was it is still, because it's still up and running, a boot camp run where the trainers or coaches are firefighters or elite sports people. And yeah, and you go outside in parks in Paris. And so you run in parks and you use the public chairs as weights. And so you lift chairs, you push yourself against a wall, you do everything outside. Actually, I really loved it. I really enjoyed it because when I'm there, I know that I'm going to spend maybe 1 hour or 90 minutes, I can't remember, but where I don't have to think about anything. You know, someone will be telling me, you run and you stop, you run for 10 minutes and you run faster. And I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need to socialize. I don't need to pitch. I don't need to manage and deal with any problems. And it was just, it's just very, very relaxing to know that for 60 minutes or 90 minutes, everything will be taken care of in your life. So I found it very, very powerful. And then when I realized that the upcoming years will be quite tough in terms of emotions and in terms of problems to handle, and also in terms that I will be feeling more and more, not isolated, but there will be hard decision to make. And I know that one of the human tendencies is to say, okay, I have so much to do, so I'm going to stay at work longer. Whereas I decided to do something, have a different approach and say, okay, well, I'm not going to spend longer hours because in the end, everything gets resolved.
Yes.
I say, I'm going to do something that is challenging, something that requires long hours of training. And so I remember this stupid thing I read in magazine.
The magazine.
When I was younger, then that running a marathon is difficult and you shouldn't run a marathon. And so I decided to take up the challenge, decided to run my first marathon in 2013, because it was a way for me to, in business, you do different things, you try different things, but you don't know if it's going to work,
That's true,
because there's a lot of interactions. There are other people, you don't know how your sales will go. You don't know how one action you set and you've put in place will work in terms of sales and marketing. You don't know how your staff will react and the team will work. So there's a lot of unknown factors. What I like about the approach of training for a marathon is that you have a training plan. And this is fabulous because you have a training plan and you know that if you follow the training plan, you set the objectives, you follow the training plan, and if you're not too bad, you're making progress. And as long as you make progress at the end of the training plan, you will achieve your goal. Yeah. So that's something that is really reassuring for me. I have on one side something that is really, really risky and I don't know what the outcome would be. But on the other side, I have something that is really, really safe. If I run and if I practice, if I do my
miles,
my miles, I know that I will make progress. My long runs, when you do your interval trainings and your long runs, you know that at the end of the day, at the end of the session, you will be making progress. And it's this all the step by step, all the small progress that you're making every single session that is really reassuring. So it's a way for me to counterbalance the whole thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You should write a book about this, how your experience was, because I'm personally super interested on how the sports can help you in business. I'm a solo entrepreneur too, and I know we all say it's lonely. I mean, the marathon running can also be lonely. You can train always alone, but you can also go in a group, but it can help you to clear your mind. I think for me, it's mostly clearing the mind and just be away from all the problems that we have and the decisions.
Yeah. I mean, you say that it could be very lonely, but it could be a team sport as well.
Yeah.
Because I joined a group, I joined a running group, and it was one of the best decisions I've made for my running because for my first half marathon, I was training alone because at that time, nobody was running. I mean, I didn't know anybody who was running. And then when I decided to run my first marathon, I joined a group, and it was fantastic because I was in part of the group of people who are beginners and slow runners. I haven't told you, but I'm very, very slow runner. Yeah, but still, I'm a proud runner.
That's
yeah,
good.
because I'm there. I would say the way that we're making progress together is very, very important. It's not, okay, we're training. Might be a lonely sport, but it's not because we're training as a group. And you know that week after week, we're making progress together. I remember one time I was running with a friend who was running also, who was training for her marathon for the first time. And I was pushing her and I was telling her, you can do it. But it was a very long distance. I can't remember. I think it was 28. It was the first time we were running this 28. And it was the first time I was doing my 28K. But I was telling her, you can do it. Of course you can do it. But for me, it was also the first time.
Yeah.
But I was pushing her, and that gave me the strength to push further because I know that if I stop, she would stop as well. It's not only about me, it's about us. And that's very beautiful about this group training.
I think so, and especially and maybe this is our recommendation for novice runners, join a group so you can actually help each other, even if it's the first 28 kilometers for you, it's also for the other, and you have that experience together. You never will forget that. And then the marathon in itself, you're on alone, you're competing with others. But I used to belong to a group too, and the group has helped me and propelled me to do more. So it's the group, right?
Yes, it is a group thing. Really, I realized that when I was that was in 2013, before we had this marathon. I signed up for 30K trail run in the outskirts of Paris. It was, I think, 2 weeks before the marathon, but because we were all overwhelmed and we said, oh, let's do it. So we decided to run this 30K trail run. And of course, we had no experience running trails, which requires another set of skills. And because I didn't even have the proper shoes, but anyway. But anyway, we decided to do that. And I don't know for what reason, the person I usually run with, my training partner, somehow I lost her. And so the first 25K, that was fine. It was fine. I mean, even though it was in the woods and we're going uphill and downhill, it was fine. But then the last 5K, I think, was inside Paris. And because it wasn't a really popular run, we were on the sidewalk. The streets were not closed. We were on the sidewalk. And because I was running very, very slow, it was part of an organization called the Eco Trail. So you have the runners, but you also have the power walkers.
The Nordic walkers,
The Nordic walkers, And so I was running so slow that I was running with the Nordic walkers. I just want to let you imagine the sound of the stick.
Click, click,
click, click, click, click, click. And I mean, it was hard because you have the cars on the side and you have the click, click, click. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm not going to finish this race. There's no way I could do that. I could finish it. Then I thought, oh, well, I really need to find my friend Laura, I started this race with, and somehow I lost. So I started to slow down because she was behind me. I started to slow down, and then there was one stage I felt that she was behind me. So I turned my head, I looked at her, and we both nodded, and we kept going on. And I mean, without a word, it was just beautiful as well.
Mm.
We knew that we started together and we need to finish it together.
Mm.
And because of her, and if she wasn't around, she wasn't running with me, I think I would probably have stopped it, because it was horrible. It was horrible. The environment was very difficult. But because she was with me and she was relying on me as well,
Yeah.
so we finished it together.
What a
Yeah.
nice story. It's like a magical moment when you turned around, you saw her, and
Yes.
then without even speaking, you were able
Yes.
to support
Yes.
each other, right? In those difficult times. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, the sidewalk was very, very narrow. So
Mhm.
I was running in front of her, not even on next to her, but
Oh.
we knew that we were together.
It was almost like something invisible between the two of you. You
Yes.
felt, oh,
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
arrived together.
To finish up our episode, is there any recommendation you have for people who want to enter the marathon or just the running? I liked it very much when you said the running has helped you in your business. And I also have to say, I love to go to yoga class because somebody is telling me what to do. I think I'm in the same boat as you. Like when we are always giving and talking to people and pitching and selling, it's sometimes nice to give up that leadership role and just be a team member.
Yeah, I think if you want to start running or do any sports, just run, just do it. I think it's not difficult. I mean, everybody has started one day. Everybody has been a starter one day in their life. No matter how fast they run today or how many marathons they have, everybody has started one day. So just start and just say that as long as you are willing to do the work, as long as you're willing to practice and push yourself a little bit, not too much, just a little bit, you'll be able to make progress and you'll be proud of the progress that you'll be making. So just start, and you don't need to get the perfect gear. Just, even if you don't have running shoes or sport shoes, take a pair of sneakers. You don't need all this fancy leggings or whatever. Just, get something you'll feel comfortable with. And the most important thing is to run and step by step, one step after another.
That's it. You run in Paris. Can you give away your secret where you're running?
Well, actually, there are two tracks I love running on. There's one which is from Bastille Opera. If you follow the Bastille Opera, there's a big avenue that leads you to the river Seine, La Seine. And if you go, actually, you run along the river. So if you go back and forth, it's probably a good 12K. So which is good, which is really good. And it's very scenic because you can see all the monuments. It's actually the river as the cruise boats. So you'll see the same. You see the same monuments. There's another one which is a little bit more hidden and probably less touristy, and it's more for the locals, which is, again, it's behind the starting point is Opera Bastille. There's a former aqueduct, a kind of bridge that leads you to a kind of forest. And if you go, and there's no car. So if you go back and forth, it's 7K, just going from this point to the forest. So then if you want to run any further in the forest, I mean, you can run as many K or as many miles as you want.
So check this episode if you want to run in Paris. Leekei has 2 beautiful tracks to go. Thank you so much, Leekei. That was really inspirational, and good luck with the running and your enterprise.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susanne. Thank you for having me.
This podcast is being sponsored by Get Loopy. On episode 41, you can hear the story of Isabel, the co-founder and CEO. Get Loopy, get a 20% discount off your first order. Getloopy.com.